My child, tonight, God is not whispering to you. He is speaking directly to your soul, and what He wants you to understand may shake you to your core. You've been confused. You've been questioning your worth. You've been watching from a distance, wondering why someone else is still standing where you believe you should be. And in the quiet moments when your heart feels heavy, you ask the question you never say out loud: if God wants me, then why is another woman still there? And God says, because you are misreading the season. You think delay means denial. You think silence means absence. You think another presence means replacement. But I tell you now, what I pause is never what I cancel. You see what is in front of you, but you don't see what is being arranged behind the scenes. You see her place, but you don't see your purpose. And that is where the enemy works hardest, in what you cannot see. God is not confused. God is not distracted. God is not changing His mind about you. What He is doing is preparing you for a version of life you are not yet ready to handle. You begged for love, but you were still addicted to validation. You asked for commitment, but you were still tolerating disrespect. You wanted a kingdom connection, but you were still operating in survival mode. So God, in His mercy, did not move you forward too quickly, because acceleration without preparation creates destruction. You asked why another woman is still there. And God asks you gently, would you have survived the truth had I removed her earlier? There are lessons that can only be learned through delay. There are blind spots that only exposure can heal. There are weaknesses that only loneliness can reveal. If God had placed you where you wanted to be before you were healed, you would have loved from a place of fear, not faith. You would have attached instead of aligned. You would have settled instead of chosen. And God refuses to bless you with something that would eventually break you. You are not being hidden because you are unworthy. You are being hidden because you are valuable. Just like a seed is buried before it blooms, God has covered you before He reveals you. The process feels like rejection because you only see the surface. But under the surface, roots are growing. Strength is forming. Discernment is developing. And one day, when you finally rise, you will realize the delay was not punishment, it was protection. You wonder if you are forgotten. But God never forgets what He promised. He remembers every tear you cried at midnight. He remembers the nights you begged Him to explain why your heart kept being chosen last. He remembers the times you smiled in public and broke in private. He remembers the prayers you spoke in anger, confusion, and desperation. And He still chose you. You are not the backup plan. You are not the second option. You are not an afterthought. You are the one He is sculpting with precision. When someone else stands where you thought you belonged, it is not proof that you lost, it is proof that God is working on timing, not favoritism. People enter seasons for different reasons. Some come to teach. Some come to test. Some come to expose. Very few come to stay. Just because someone is present doesn't mean they are permanent. Just because a door is closed to you right now doesn't mean it is locked forever. It only means the room is still being prepared. And hear this clearly, because it is the truth many are afraid to accept: God will never give you someone who makes you beg for consistency. God will never bind you to someone who thrives on confusion. God will never seal your destiny to someone who only loves you in convenience. If another woman is still standing there, it is not because she is better than you, it is because the story is not finished yet. And the ending has not been revealed. You keep asking, why her? And God keeps answering, why not you, once you are healed? Because God is not interested in temporary happiness. He is invested in permanent peace. And peace does not come from being chosen too early. Peace comes from being chosen when you are finally whole. You have no idea how many times God has protected you from a relationship that felt right but would have destroyed your future. You have no idea how many scenarios were stopped because your tears would have turned into trauma. Some of the delays that hurt you the most saved you from a lifetime of regret. Some of the unanswered prayers were actually divine rescues disguised as rejection. And yes, God wants you. Not the broken version that kept chasing love. Not the wounded version that tolerated disrespect. Not the exhausted version that begged to be seen. He wants the healed you. The confident you. The discerning you. The version of you that knows your worth so deeply that you never have to compete again. Because what is aligned with you will never require competition. Another woman may be present now, but she is not standing in your destiny. She is standing in a chapter, not the conclusion. God did not write multiple endings for your story. He wrote one. And what is meant for you has your name engraved in it eternally. Nothing can intercept it. Nothing can replace it. Nothing can steal it. And here is the part you need to understand most deeply: God is watching how you respond while you wait. Do you grow bitter? Or do you grow better? Do you compare? Or do you prepare? Do you lose faith? Or do you build endurance? The waiting room is not punishment, it is training ground. And the way you behave here determines how you will handle what comes next. You think you are being rejected, but God says you are being refined. You think you are being overlooked, but God says you are being fortified. You think you are being delayed, but God says you are being developed. You are not behind. You are not late. You are not losing. You are being positioned. And one day, the same God who asked you to wait will ask you if you are ready. Ready for a love that does not trigger your anxiety. Ready for a connection that does not awaken your insecurities. Ready for a presence that does not make you question your worth. Ready for a season where you no longer chase, but choose. And when that day comes, you will not even recognize the version of you who once cried over being second. Because by then, you will know that God never makes you second in your own story. If another woman is still there, release the need to compete. If another season is still open, release the pressure to rush. If another door is still closed, release the urge to force it. What God seals cannot be broken. What God delays cannot be stolen. What God promises cannot fail. You are not waiting in vain. Heaven is working in detail. Every delay is calculated. Every pause is intentional. Every silence is strategic. And God says to you tonight, with all the authority of eternity, I still want you. I have not changed my mind. I am not finished with your story. And what I am about to do in your life will make you understand why you had to wait, why you had to lose, why you had to be hidden, and why you had to cry in secret. You thought the waiting was God forgetting you. But God says the waiting is Him protecting the version of you that didn't yet know how powerful you were becoming. Because if He had released certain blessings too early, you would have mistaken intensity for love, attention for commitment, and chemistry for destiny. God had to teach you the difference between being chosen and being cherished. There is a difference between someone wanting you and someone being sent for you. Want can be temporary. Assignment is eternal. Right now, your silence is louder than your prayers. The nights when you stare into the dark, questioning if you did something wrong, those nights are shaping your faith. The moments when you almost gave up, almost sent that message, almost lowered your standards again, those moments are strengthening your boundaries. You don't even realize how dangerous you were to your own future before God stepped in and slowed things down. You were willing to accept breadcrumbs because you were starving for connection. You were willing to stay unseen just to not feel alone. And God watched your heart break and said, "Not like this. Not again. Not for her." You keep thinking God is testing your patience. But what He is really shaping is your identity. Because once you know who you are, you will never again beg for what should come willingly. Once you know your worth, you won't chase what is running. Once you know your value, you won't compete with what was never your competition. The woman you are becoming would never tolerate what the woman you once were tolerated. And that is exactly why God made you wait. The truth is, you were never meant to arrive in your promise broken, insecure, and unsure. God never builds futures on unstable foundations. He stabilizes you first. He strengthens you first. He heals you first. And yes, sometimes that healing hurts more than the wound ever did. Because healing requires honesty. Healing requires patience. Healing requires letting go of versions of love that felt familiar but were poisoning your spirit slowly. You ask God why it takes so long. He asks you if you are ready to steward what you keep praying for. Because what you call delayed, God calls protected from destruction. What you call passed over, God calls preserved for something higher. What you call another woman standing there, God calls temporary placement in a permanent plan. And plans from God never collapse. They outlast confusion. They outlive competition. They override timing. You don't see it yet, but one day you will look back and realize how many times God removed you from rooms where your soul was slowly suffocating. You will realize how many times you were crying over someone who would have never been able to love the woman you eventually became. You will realize how many goodbyes were actually answers to prayers you didn't even know how to pray. Right now, you are being emptied of emotional chaos so that you can be filled with steady love. You are being delivered from emotional addiction so that you can experience emotional safety. You are being released from anxious attachment so you can experience secure connection. God is not just preparing your future, He is reprogramming your heart. You once believed that love was proven through intensity. God is teaching you that real love is proven through consistency. You once believed that passion meant destiny. God is teaching you that peace is the real confirmation. You once believed that tears showed depth. God is now showing you that joy is the evidence. And yes, another woman may still be present. But presence does not equal permanence. Occupancy does not equal ownership. And temporary access does not equal divine assignment. There are people who will sit in rooms never meant to be theirs forever. God allows it for exposure, not for inheritance. And when the season ends, it ends suddenly. Without explanation. Without warning. Without negotiation. Because when God moves, He does not send an apology, He sends transition. You are not being replaced. You are being reserved. Reserved for a love that doesn't confuse you. Reserved for a peace that doesn't haunt you. Reserved for a future that doesn't require you to betray your own boundaries. Reserved for someone who doesn't need to be convinced of your value. And when God finally releases you into that season, you will understand why He blocked the shortcuts. You will understand why He closed the doors you kept pounding on. You will understand why the almosts never became the forever. Because almost was protecting you from never. You will also understand that the woman you once envied was actually carrying a role that you were never meant to play. You were not meant to be the lesson. You were meant to be the legacy. You were not meant to be the trial. You were meant to be the testimony. And hear this with clarity: what is meant for you will never need to be stolen. It will never need to be manipulated. It will never need to be forced. It will arrive with alignment, not chaos. It will arrive with peace, not panic. It will arrive with confirmation, not confusion. The reason your heart still aches is not because you lost, it is because the story is still unfolding. God does not waste pain. He converts it. He does not ignore tears. He collects them. He does not overlook sacrifice. He multiplies it. And every moment you stayed when you could have left, every moment you walked away when it hurt, every moment you trusted Him when the outcome was unclear, those moments are now stitched into your destiny. And one day, without warning, the chapter will turn. The silence will break. The delay will end. The clarity will arrive. And the same God who asked you to wait will stand before you and say, "Now you understand. Now you're ready. Now you see." Until then, do not measure God's love by the speed of your outcome. Measure it by the strength of your growth. Do not question your worth because of temporary positioning. Do not confuse a shadow season with a forgotten identity. You are not forgotten. You are not unseen. You are not ignored. You are in formation. And what is being formed in you right now will require strength you did not yet possess before. There is a moment coming in your life where everything that once felt unclear will suddenly make sense. Not because the pain disappears, but because the purpose finally reveals itself. You will look back at the nights you cried quietly, the days you doubted yourself, the seasons where you felt invisible, and you will realize that none of it was wasted. Every delay carved wisdom. Every heartbreak sharpened discernment. Every disappointment redirected your spirit toward something greater than what you were settling for. You once thought you were being rejected by people. The truth is, you were being protected by God from futures that would have drained you. You mistook separation for loss when it was actually rescue. You thought distance meant abandonment when it was actually alignment. And God allowed you to feel the ache only because He knew one day you would also feel the peace that makes the ache worth it. You wondered why love never arrived clean. Why it always came with confusion, jealousy, insecurity, and fear. You wondered why you were always the one trying harder, loving deeper, waiting longer. And God says, because you were learning the cost of pouring into cups that were never meant to hold your depth. Some people only have the capacity to receive attention, not devotion. Some only crave the excitement, not the responsibility. Some admire your light but don't know how to protect it. And God will never release you permanently into the hands of someone who mishandles your heart. You were not created to beg to be valued. You were created to be recognized. You were not designed to compete. You were designed to be chosen without rivalry. And when God removes you from environments where you must fight for significance, it is not punishment. It is elevation. You think another woman standing there means you are losing ground. But God says it often means you have outgrown the season entirely. Because sometimes, the reason you no longer fit is not because you failed, it's because you advanced. You evolved. You healed. You moved beyond who you once were. And trying to return to a space that no longer matches your growth will only shrink you. There are things you used to tolerate that now exhaust your soul. Conversations you used to entertain that now drain your energy. Patterns you once normalized that now disturb your peace. That is not weakness. That is transformation. Your tolerance is shrinking because your value is rising. And God is not preparing you for someone who still lives in chaos. He is preparing you for someone who knows how to rest in stability. He is not preparing you for emotional roller coasters. He is preparing you for emotional safety. He is not preparing you for guessing games. He is preparing you for clarity. The reason the waiting feels unbearable at times is because your old self is still addicted to urgency. You were trained by disappointment to rush, to cling, to panic when things slowed down. But God is teaching your nervous system how to trust steady ground. He is teaching your spirit how to rest without fear. He is teaching your heart that love does not have to hurt in order to be real. You don't need signs anymore to prove that God sees you. The mere fact that you are still standing after everything you endured is already the sign. The fact that you didn't become bitter, closed off, or cruel is already the miracle. The fact that you still believe in love, even after experiencing disappointment, means God preserved something sacred inside you. You survived the season that almost broke you. You outgrew the version of you that settled. You learned to walk away without needing closure. You learned to let go without needing revenge. You learned to trust God even when He was silent. That alone makes you dangerous to every limited situation that tries to hold you. And listen closely now, because this is the part most people never realize. The waiting is not just about who is coming into your life. It is about who is leaving your life forever. God is slowly, quietly, and permanently removing the need for chaos from your heart. He is rewiring what excites you. What once triggered butterflies now triggers red flags. What once felt intoxicating now feels exhausting. That is not loss, that is growth. Soon, attention will no longer impress you. Soon, words will no longer hypnotize you. Soon, promises will no longer move you. Only actions will. And that is when the counterfeit connections lose their power over you. You won't need to wonder anymore why someone did not choose you. You will simply be grateful they did not. You won't need to imagine what could have been. You will be living inside what is. You won't need to stalk the past. You will be too busy building the future. And when that moment arrives, when the season shifts, you will feel it in your spirit before you ever see it with your eyes. The air will feel lighter. Your chest will feel calmer. Your sleep will feel deeper. Your laughter will feel free. And you will realize that God was never delaying your happiness. He was detoxing your heart from everything that would have contaminated it. The timing you once resented will become the timing you thank Him for. You will understand why the door didn't open when you first knocked. You will understand why the message never came. You will understand why the connection faded. You will understand why you were left alone. Because had it happened sooner, you would have lost yourself trying to keep it. And then one day, quietly, without thunder or warning, the shift happens. Not outside of you first, but inside of you. The need to chase disappears. The anxiety to be chosen fades. The urge to prove your worth dies a peaceful death. You wake up different, without even realizing when the transformation completed. What once controlled your emotions no longer controls your spirit. What once kept you awake at night no longer has a voice in your thoughts. You don't hate the past, you simply outgrow it. This is the moment God was preparing you for. The moment when you finally stop asking, "Why wasn't I enough?" and begin understanding, "I was always too valuable to be given too early." The moment when your heart no longer aches for what walked away, because you no longer define your future by what left you. The moment when you realize that the woman you once compared yourself to was never your enemy, she was just a sign that your chapter had not started yet. You finally understand that God never kept you waiting to punish you. He kept you waiting to preserve you. Now your prayers sound different. Now your standards feel non-negotiable. Now your spirit responds to peace faster than it reacts to pain. Now your heart chooses alignment over attention. You no longer beg for clarity. You move only when there is confirmation. You no longer settle for potential. You choose consistency. You no longer confuse attachment with love. You recognize safety when it arrives. And that is the exact moment God releases what you could not handle before. You won't even see it coming the way you imagined. It does not arrive with chaos. It does not rush your nervous system. It does not make you question your place. It enters your life naturally, steadily, gently, like it always belonged there. And your spirit recognizes it before your mind tries to analyze it. There is no jealousy to fight. No insecurity to suppress. No fear to manage. Only calm. Only certainty. Only peace. This is when you realize why God removed every unstable connection. This is when you realize why every forced relationship collapsed. This is when you realize why every shortcut was blocked. Because this season requires a healed version of you. If God had given you this blessing earlier, you would have sabotaged it with wounds you didn't yet know how to heal. You would have questioned what never needed to be questioned. You would have feared what was never threatening. You would have doubted what was never fragile. And so God waited, not because you were behind, but because the promise was too sacred to be rushed. And here is the quiet truth nobody told you: what is meant for you does not take effort to keep. It takes responsibility, yes. It takes maturity, yes. It takes emotional availability, yes. But it does not demand that you lose your dignity, your boundaries, or your self-respect to maintain it. What is meant for you does not make you feel replaceable. It makes you feel rooted. It makes you feel secure. It makes you feel chosen without competition. And suddenly, the question disappears. The question that once haunted you: if God wants me, why was another woman still there? You never ask it again. Because now you understand. She was never ahead of you. She was never above you. She was never replacing you. She was simply standing in a season that had nothing to do with your destiny. You were not late. You were being refined. You were not losing. You were being repositioned. You were not forgotten. You were being hidden for protection. And what God hides, He hides for preservation, not rejection. Now you see it clearly. Now your heart no longer aches for what left. You do not crave apology. You do not need closure. You do not need justification. Because peace replaced the need for explanation. You forgive, not for them, but because you are no longer chained to that version of yourself. You no longer search for signs in other people. You trust the alignment in your spirit. You no longer panic when things slow down. You no longer rush when emotions rise. You've learned that God's delays are never empty, they are pregnant with purpose. And now the reward is not just the blessing, the reward is who you became while waiting for it. You became stronger. You became calmer. You became wiser. You became unreachable to manipulation. You became allergic to chaos. You became anchored in truth. You don't chase. You don't compete. You don't beg. You choose. And that choice alone changes your entire life. There will still be memories. Yes. There will still be moments of reflection. Yes. There will still be echoes of old emotions. Yes. But they no longer control you. They no longer define you. They no longer pull you backward. Now, they only remind you how far you've come. And one day, when you look back on the season that once broke you, you will no longer cry from pain. You will cry from gratitude. Because had God allowed what you wanted when you wanted it, you would have never become who you needed to be. You would have stayed smaller. You would have stayed uncertain. You would have stayed dependent. You would have stayed in survival. But now, you stand in alignment. Not because life became perfect, but because your spirit became unshakable. And God whispers to you now, softly but firmly, I never wanted to hurt you. I never wanted to confuse you. I never wanted to make you feel forgotten. I only wanted to make sure that when I finally gave you what you prayed for, it would not destroy you. It would not enslave you. It would not replace me. It would not steal your peace. I wanted to give it to you at the moment you were strong enough to receive it without losing yourself.